The world is fast changing and news breaks at lightning speed. Let us guide you through events and stories about global narratives and developments in geopolitics, diplomacy, foreign affairs, and world economy. Get factual and multi-angle perspectives on stories around the globe. Global Television brings you Diplomatic Perspective every Monday and Friday with Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Diplomatic Perspective, the world in front of you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another time again when we bring you Diplomatic Perspective on Global Television. And of course, we will be looking at diplomatic engagements today. What's your take? What do you think about Nigeria's diplomatic engagement? A lot of people have talked about that in the past. There have been a lot of engagements, diplomatic engagements, a lot of challenges, and of course, even the ones that some people think is yielding results. Some other persons are questioning it. Different perspective to our diplomatic engagement in Nigeria. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. We will be having my guest talk about this topic. I have my guest already seated in the studio here. And this topic is worth talking about because this time and season, there have been a lot of diplomatic engagements, the president's traveling, and of course the Minister of Foreign Affairs also traveling, and a whole lot of engagement. But then, what are the challenges? Can we say, well, corruption? Can we say, well, trust? Can we say disbelief? Or so many other things. But then, we'll be looking at this engagement today. My guest is already here, like I said, in the person of Emmanuel Ozemena. It's good to have you join us on the program today.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
All right, it's good to have you join us on the program. Let's quickly look at the issue of the challenges in Nigeria's diplomatic engagement. What do you think of Nigeria's diplomatic engagement and diplomacy as a country?
Yeah, I think to begin with, at independence in 1960, we had a clear foreign policy ideology and direction, you could say, making Africa the centerpiece of Nigeria's diplomatic engagement. So what it meant was that issues around Africa, Africa's development, democracy in Africa, regional and sub-regional issues, security, economic development, and cooperation was at the core of our engagement. And over time, another key issue then was also non-alignment. Nigeria signed on to the non-alignment treaty, meaning that, look, we're not going to get engrossed or aligned to either the Western blocs then represented by the United States and Europe that were, pushing Western ideas, or the Eastern bloc represented by East Germany and the older USSR. So Nigeria belonged to non-aligned movement. They didn't want to belong to either of these blocs. So that was also our key foreign policy objective. And over time, what we have seen is that each of the administration that we had in place have tried to come up with what you could call in short term foreign policy direction or agenda. Currently, the current administration, even though at home has a renewed hope agenda, has also developed what they call the four Ds as the key driver of their foreign policy, talking about democracy, talking about development, talking about diaspora and such issues, as the key driver of their foreign policy engagement. And that's where we are at the moment. What it means is that at each of the Nigerian missions across the world, Nigeria has 109 missions comprising embassies, high commissions, and permanent missions at multilateral institutions like UNESCO, United Nations, WHO, World Trade Organizations and all that. So the entire bulk of what you could call Nigeria's diplomatic missions are 109 across the world. But again, one of the things that has happened in the last almost 3 years is that our missions have not been properly, activated or manned by substantive diplomats and ambassadors, and that also has a way of impacting on the overall delivery of our foreign policy goals. I mean, most experts, including myself, have said, the president can travel to a country. The much he can stay is 1 week and he's back. So, but if we had an ambassadors before now, and even now, I mean, it's just a few weeks ago that I think 64, 63 ambassadors designate were finally named and posted. Their posting came out, and then I'm not sure at the moment any of them had resumed because of the processes of, you have what is called agreement back and forth between the host country and Nigeria, and that also will take quite some time. So what it means is that you could say since the beginning of the administration of the current administration, we've had missions with our leadership. And that also would have had a way of impacting on our diplomatic engagement across the world.
All right. Generally now, you just talked about diplomats just now, all right? They are just a few of them that were posted. In fact, those that were posted, there were rumor, okay, of rejection of some of them and all of that. What does that speak about Nigeria?
No, nobody has been posted. Look, at the moment, Nigeria do not have, I'm not sure we have ambassadors anywhere in the world. Because look, the processes are very simple. The president is the appointee, or the appointer. He now appoints someone as an ambassador to say Germany. He sends the name to the National Assembly for confirmation, because the Constitution says the National Assembly, the Senate particularly, must have to confirm that nomination, and that confirmation process takes quite a while. But that has been done. Then the next thing is that you now reach out to the country where you now want to send this this envoy designate. Is what we have is ambassadors designate, because, and then the country now do their own paperwork and all that and say, and write you back and say, we have accepted it. We have accepted the envoy you're sending to Germany. So back again, they will now write Nigeria. Then the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and commander-in-chief will now issue what they call letter of credence. That's an authorization from the president of Federal Republic of Nigeria to the German Chancellor saying, look, I'm sending so and so as my representative in your country. So until that ambassador, when he resumes, or he or she resumes, submits that letter of credence, is at that particular time that he now becomes an ambassador. So all we have now is ambassador designate. So that's a proper diplomatic term. Ambassador designate to Spain, to China, to wherever. Because nobody has until you submit that letter of credence. Even when you arrive in that country where you have been posted to, you must submit that letter and is officially accepted. That's when you now become a member of the diplomatic corps. But in that country,
do you think? Well, okay, let me just leave the ambassadors now. Let's talk about because at least there have been diplomatic engagements, all right, since this administration came into office. What do you think are the challenges of Nigeria's diplomatic engagement?
Well, just like any other country, Nigeria, the key thing to do at the moment, you have people in acting positions. The most senior officer at each mission will act. Now, the first question is that those most senior officers, are they treated like substantive ambassadors? That's the first question. if you're not treated like as substantive ambassadors, so it means we are not playing high at that level. Because when I'm not even sure they will be members of what you call diplomatic corps, because top level ambassadors, substantive ambassadors, belong to that corps. So it means that Nigeria, in the first place, had scored their own game. That's what it looks like. What footballers call own game. Having failed to have appointed substantive ambassadors across the very 109 missions that we have. It doesn't must have 109 persons appointed. You could have some diplomatic missions are combined. You have people having more than one diplomatic missions to manage. In that case, it's Ambassador Plenipotentiary. I mean, the ambassador, for instance, the ambassador of Nigeria to the Republic of Ireland is also the same person who manages the Nigerian affairs for Republic of Iceland. That is a very much smaller country. Or the Nigerian ambassador to, say, Brazil could have Paraguay, a few other countries around to also manage. That's the way it's usually done. It's done for purposes of having some sort of flexibility. For instance, the Nigerian ambassador to Ethiopia is also the permanent representative of Nigeria at the Economic Commission for Africa, which is a UN agency. Is also a Nigerian representative at the African Union, because they are all in Addis Ababa. So what it means is that we may have lost those opportunities of leveraging at that top level. And investors, I have said this at several fora, usually have a top level political head who is substantive. Investors, businesses, people who want to do business with your country would want to speak with a substantive, someone who is in a substantive position. Meaning that the substantive ambassador has a 3-year tenure. So they are sure this tenure will run for 3 years. They are sure whatever they discuss now or approvals they get would not be changed when you now have a new president. That's how, you could call it security of tenure. When you are sure this tenure will run for so and so, you can now say, a decision is taken today, we can move it to the next level. In the next 6 months, it will still be there. So that stability, it's also very, very important. But I can tell you, at the moment, the people all the officers who are managing various missions would have been working 24/7 to ensure that they communicate the development objective of Nigeria, the foreign policy goals of Nigeria, and the partnership intentions of Nigeria to play as a member of the international community.
All right, let's look at what do you think of what do Nigerians, now, a lot of Nigerians, I could remember just recently the president traveled to the United Kingdom and we heard of the deal, everything that happened, and Nigerians were saying so many things. Some people have praised that move as a very fantastic one. Other persons are saying, well, this may in a way in the future affect Nigerians, even though it's a good, for some persons, it's a good deal. So now, what do you think about the level of the president? Because the president has been traveling, to build diplomatic relations, bilateral relations and all of that, even grow investors, as the case may be. So what do you think of all of this being done by the presidency? Do you think it is good enough, or like Nigerians are thinking, it could pose some challenges to our diplomatic engagement in the future if terms and conditions are not properly met?
Well, there are no business agreement or MOU or relationship anywhere in the world that is error proof. That's number one. or that is beyond disagreement in future, or you can say for every possible crisis or issues that will come up in future, we've taken care of it. So it's about lived experiences. Lived experiences in terms of, take for instance, the administration of Goodluck Jonathan had some investors who came in here to investment in Calabar. Remember the popular the company that took Nigeria to the arbitration court in London, or that of the pending also issue of EPZ in Ogun State, also at the arbitration. What these guys did, investors would do most often, is to look for a neutral ground. They will include it in the memorandum of understanding and say, look, should there be some sort of disagreement in future, we would prefer that this matter be adjudicated at an arbitration court in London or in Geneva, and because they would want some level of a neutral arbiter to manage that crisis should it arise at any time. But I think the key thing we need to do is, if you look at the 4D of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's foreign policy engagement, it's saying Nigeria would support democracy or democratic institutions and systems at everywhere, at the regional level, at sub-regional level, at global level. So Nigeria is a member of the United Nations. Assuming there is some crisis in a country and a vote is to be taken, how would Nigeria vote? So Nigeria is committed to democracy, Nigeria is committed to development, and Nigeria is also committed to leveraging its diaspora resource, because Nigeria has got a lot of huge diaspora resource. Take a census of Nigerians who are in the commanding height of the economy across the world, of industry, of professions, of skills. So how do we build linkages so that they can do some skill transfer back home to scale up development at home? We can also look at pushing for economic development. What should we be looking at? What type of industries do we want to promote? What type of partnership do we intend to promote? And then in nurturing, cultivating, and growing this partnership, what should be our intention? How would, say, an industry that is coming here, or a business concern or entity that wants to set up in Nigeria, say from Germany or from China or from United States, how much of effort have we done to create ease of doing business so it becomes an incentive to keep them? And then what decisions are we taking about repatriation of capitals? We need to have these clear policies in place. Because comes here, invest, do we treat his capital? How many percent of that repatriation can he do? We have a whole lot of issues. So in driving foreign direct investment, you have Ministry of Industries, Trade and Investment coming here, because you have trade policy angle of it, investment policy angle of it, and also the industrialization part of it. So of Industry, Trade and Investment, and the Foreign Affairs, perhaps the Office of the Attorney General, who should be looking at the details of whatever MOU being signed, of whatever contract that is being signed, of whatever treaty that the two countries are signing, trade agreements, trade partnership, and whatever it is. So it's a whole lot of a multi-sectoral support as it is, not just foreign affairs. If you go to a mission embassy of any country anywhere in the world, you're going to have trade advisors, investment advisors, you have political counselors, you have cultural attaches and what have you. So the idea is that each part of this relationship and partnership is clearly taken care of. You have people who are experts there, who advises, who provides leadership, who provides advisory support to the ambassador. Like we keep saying, perhaps by the time the federal government is able to mobilize ambassadors designate that have just been named. I think it's about 2 weeks ago their names were released, and we are able to fast track their, even though give and take, it could take another 6 months or more for some of these ambassadors designate to be in their place. So it's quite
a long time.
Yeah. The point is, certainly, yes, it's not the fault of any country, because no country can force you to send in your invoice. It's your business to send them. So, by the time I recall, I think when President Tinubu took over, he announced about 4 weeks or thereafter, recalling all the Nigerian envoys across the world, all the ambassadors. I think they were meant to have returned either by October of 2023 or thereabout. So I thought at that point in time that the process for appointing the next set was already there, because that's what countries do. I'm not, take for instance, I follow the first term and second, term of Donald Trump as president of the United States of America. The moment elections were over, he was announcing key diplomatic positions, both in his first term and second term, because it's not rocket science, and there's no rule anywhere that say you must bring all of their names at the same time, and that you must recall everybody at the same time. The point is that either because we are still after over 60 years, we are yet to put in place processes for having an administrative processes that are, you could say, almost automated, because the US looks very automated. The president wins election. During the process of campaign, he's already identifying priority areas. Who would I send to the Republic of Great Britain? Who am I going to send to Republic of Ireland? Who am I going to send to the Federal Republic of Nigeria? Who will I be sending to the Republic of the Cameroons? So he's already thinking and naming at different point in time, and the Congress will be approving them as the names are coming. But here, what we do, appoint 100 people, send their name, and most of the times, even confirmation sometimes looks is another point I usually don't like discussing. Oh, you are the wife of a former governor, take a bow and go. All kinds of things that you would rather not imagine happens.
All right, let's look at, as we try to round up, let's look at the image of Nigeria. The whole world, the image of Nigeria is, a lot of people talk about are being affected at the borders of other countries, the point of entry and all of that. Do you think this could pose challenges to diplomatic engagement?
Yeah, I think what we need to do, first of all, there's a principle of reciprocity. What it means is that if an envoy sits in a country and that his citizens are not properly treated well, it's his responsibility to raise the issue with the host country where he is. Let me give a typical example. Even people who commit crime in another country, is the responsibility of the country to step in and provide consular support for them. There was a particular British citizen some 10-15 years ago who was said to have been involved in drug peddling in Laos, somewhere in East Asia. And she was going to be sentenced. The British High Commission in Laos had a legal representative to support her all through the trial process. Finally, when she was sentenced, the British government made a deal with the government of Laos and said, look, we want her to come home to Britain to serve her term. After back and forth, and they had to agree. You see some Americans who are said to have been held in Afghanistan, in Pakistan and other, and the US government will step in, either for whatever crime it is, against and they will, over time, they would get through it. So it means you have a responsibility to your citizen. Perhaps I think that's what the diaspora, the D in diaspora, in our foreign policy objective is supposed to deliver. Under President Umar Musa Yar'Adua, he called this, I think the late Chief Joe Madekwe was the Nigerian High Commission, was the Nigerian Minister of Foreign Affairs. He called it citizens diplomacy. Now, that was what they call such intervention. That we should have a foreign policy that defends Nigeria wherever they are, that protects Nigeria, that ensures the right of Nigerians.
That's when you have diplomats out there.
But
in the case of Nigeria,
the thing is, the embassies of Nigeria should be up to their task. Their first responsibility is Nigeria. The second responsibility is to protect Nigerians who are in those countries. From time to time, the U.S. Embassy would issue statements advising the Americans in Nigeria what to do, where to go, in terms of advisory services. So how much of it have we seen?
Okay, well, our time is up. As a matter of fact, I think this is going to be the size of the program. But then, before we round up, I think there are certain things that we need to actually know. And of course, that's exactly what you have brought forth. That's a perspective. I want to say a very big thank you for joining us on the program today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thank you. Have a great evening.
All right, everyone. This is the size of the conversation for today, and of course, the challenges in Nigeria's diplomatic engagement are numerous, but we can't finish talking about everything in just one sitting. This is the size of diplomatic perspective for today. Thanks for joining us. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye for now.